What up and welcome to Something by Brian. I'm Brian and Halloween just came and went, so I watched a horror movie and I'ma talk about it. Full disclosure, I've not always appreciated horror movies as much as I do now. I was very easily affected by what I saw when I was younger. If I remember correctly, my very first nightmare was strictly tied to my viewing of Jurassic Park actually, so it took a while before I started watching actual horror movies. But I've come a long way and watched a lot of the classics and staples of the genre since then, but I'm nowhere near an expert. I tend to appreciate the more grounded horror flicks, home invasions, slashers and such with a tangible horror monster or killer or whatever. As soon as ghosts and the like enters the picture, I am immediately way more on edge. Stupid ghosts. Anyways, I'm gonna talk about the 2019 movie The Lodge, directed by Severin Fiala and Veronica Franz. I'm pretty sure it's maybe just a thriller, but it was plenty scary for me, and that's enough. So, the story, without spoiling it, is regarding this small family. The parents are being separated and the dad has found his new pretty young thing, and the mom is not coping all that well with that fact. The two kids, a teen boy portrayed by Jaden Martell and his younger sister, played by the upcoming Eternal actress Leah McHugh, do not take well to their new stepmom either, blaming her for their parents' marriage deteriorating and falling apart. After an incident, the father determines that the very best way for everyone to move forward is to spend the holidays together in their family lodge in the middle of nowhere. The father, however, has to go back to the city to work a bit, but hey, that just leaves plenty of room for the two kids and the stepmom to find something to bond over. Quickly, strange things begin to occur and spookiness arises. By the way, I'll touch on subjects such as suicide, mental illness and religious fanaticism in this video, so if any of those topics triggers you, maybe this review and the movie entirely isn't for you. Moving on now. So right off the bat, that recap maybe sounds pretty cliched. A lonely lodge in the middle of nowhere and characters who don't know or trust each other trying to make it through. And in some ways it is cliched, but in a rather clever way that draws on your expectations of the genre and constantly makes you second guess what's truly going on and who is actually in charge of their predicament. Is it the paranormal at large? The father just leaving his family with a somewhat stranger? That seems strange. And what's up with these kids? And poor Grace, the stepmom, wonderfully portrayed by Riley Keough, whom you might know from Mad Max Fury Road, who, as we learn more about her backstory, might be at the center of it all. I'm not gonna touch more on the story right now. I'll come back later in the spoiler segment. All I got left to say about it right now is that it is sort of a slow burn with a flashy start, a bit draggy in the second act, and then, in my humble opinion, finishes strong. As mentioned, the movie revolves around this family, and particularly the two kids and their new stepmom. Jaden Martell is quickly becoming one of my favorite young actors. Between this, It, Chapters 1 and 2, and Knives Out, I've loved him in everything I've seen him in. He portrays Aiden with this coldness that only a teen who blames you for everything bad in his life can enact. His total disregard for his father's new wife is bone-chilling because it feels very real. And on the other end, Riley Keough, who really has to go through a lot in this, totally sells the frustration and hurt such disrespect and total disinterest would instill in you. As the story unfolds, we learn more about her character's past, and she's very believable in every part of her character's journey. The directors kept her away from the kids whilst shooting this to further enhance the feeling of distance between them, and it greatly paid off. Leah McHugh, who I've never seen in anything before this, is great. I love how good young actors are becoming, and she is a very believable girl who is clearly in over her head. Richard Armitage is the father. It's not a large role, but he's also doing great. He seems like a Stephen King-like character, a somewhat distant father figure who of course writes books on scary topics such as cults. He has a couple of scenes that's demanding, and he pulls them off very well, but other than that, it's not a memorable character. Batgirl herself, Alicia Silverstone, is the mother in what can almost only be described as a glorified cameo. But I'm always happy to see her pop up in things, and she did portray this distraught woman very well. As mentioned in the beginning of the video, this movie is directed by Severin Fiala and Veronica Franz, two Austrian filmmakers who you might know from the horror movie Goodnight Mommy. This is their first venture into English-speaking filmmaking, and I have to say they did a great job. Firstly, we follow the mom, and we as the audience think she's our protagonist. Then she leaves the story, and instead we get the kids' point of view, and we're certain these must be our heroes. And later still, suddenly we start to follow the story from Grace's perspective. These shifting narratives makes it harder for us as the audience to pick up on the clues in front of us, and adds to the immaculate mood set by the powerless Lodge caught in a blizzard. The two directors really tried to push their actors to their limits, and even wanted Riley Keough to perform a stunt in which she drops through a frozen lake herself. Also, they wanted to actually turn off the power in the lodge so the actors would experience the freezing weather as their characters would. They weren't allowed to do either by the studios, understandably, but you gotta admire that grit and determination. The movie looks gorgeous and at times even feels a bit like The Shining, but that might just be the gorgeous shots of the winterly landscape surrounding them and the interior of the mysterious and scary lodge that makes me think of the Stanley Kubrick classic. The lodge is full of religious symbolism, and we learn that both the two kids are Christians, and Riley Keough's character has even been involved with a Christian cult heavily inspired by the real-life Heaven's Gate cult. And through all of the crosses and idols, it starts feeling like the lodge itself is judging poor Grace for past and present mistakes. Throughout the entire movie, we cut back and forth between scenes in the lodge to scenes reminiscent of what we've already seen, but instead taking place in a dollhouse. These cuts are tremendous fun and adds to the mystery of it all. They feel very paranormal in nature, but as the story unfolds, we learn that their true meaning is even more malicious. It is by no means a perfect movie, but the two directors really know how to work together with their cinematographer and their actors to get the absolutely most out of every scene. I'm very keen to see what the two of them are up to next. So, if you've made it this far into my video, I think it is easy to hear that I was impressed and entertained by this film. It is not your traditional horror movie, even though it dresses up as such, and it definitely delivers in the chilling department, not heavy on jump scares or the like, but instead relies heavily on the mood and atmosphere set by the lodge itself and the surrounding nothingness. It is not without its flaws, and as mentioned earlier, it does have a bit of a pacing issue in the middle, and then it touches somewhat indelicately on some subjects that maybe should be addressed in a bit more enlightened way. More on that in a bit. But overall, the strengths of this film heavily outweighs the flaws, and you leave it absolutely gut-punched, and with somewhat interesting topics to discuss with whomever you've seen it with. Because who really was the victim of this? And do the characters deserve what happens? So yeah, definitely check out The Lodge. And if you're already over all the horror content being spewed at you because of Halloween, just remember to chuck it on your watch list and catch it next Halloween. It is a solid scare to be had. Now, it's time for spoiler stuff. So leave if you don't want any of those, and stay around a bit if you still need some convincing to see this. So these kids turns out to be the actual spawn of Satan. Not literally, of course, that would have been horrible. But no, Aiden is just incredibly evil. Mia is probably too young to be held responsible, but Aiden should have known better. We learn that the dollhouse scenes are actually flashbacks to Aiden and Mia having planned all of this as a really detailed prank, I guess. So that is why the scenes in the lodge appear as they did in the dollhouse. It was all just according to plan. It seems as if they actually attempt to drive her to commit suicide, as they blame her for their mom's suicide earlier in the movie. But what they hadn't accounted for is her mental health. As when they steal her medication, more and more memories and behavioral traits from her time in the cult emerges. That is what results in the mixed feelings you'll have in the cliffhanger ending. Because of course these kids don't deserve to die. However, what they've done is incredibly malevolent, since they knew her past and mental history, and what they're doing is essentially recreating incredibly traumatic events for a mentally unstable person whom they've robbed of her needed medications. Grace is a perfectly functional human being, just trying to find love and a place of belonging after a lifetime of indoctrination and religious brainwash, and because these two adolescents can't cope with the loss of their mother, they are willing to completely destroy this innocent woman. The fact that it is the kids the entire time is an incredible twist, but it does, however, lessen the sympathy we, the audience, feels when they later are in danger, because they suddenly don't feel like real victims anymore. They feel like those horrible kids we've seen in rom-coms forever trying to discourage their new parental figure through harmless pranks and lies and such. However, this isn't a rom-com, but a very grounded horror movie, and those harmless pranks leads to very real consequences. Also, it sadly perpetuates the myth that mentally ill people are prone to violence, when in fact the opposite is true. I feel like the movie could have downplayed the mental health bit and emphasized the cult aspect more for a less, in lack of a better word, offensive portrayal of mental health issues. But then again, cult survivors is also a real thing, and I have no idea how to accurately portray those, so I think the conclusion is I don't fully know what I'm talking about anymore, and difficult topics are difficult. Thanks for watching this, and if you liked the drawing, consider liking the video, and if you liked the video, consider subscribing. Next video will be a Team C's thing, so look forward to that. Until next time, take care.